On this edition of Fulton Law and Justice, the sheriff has a new commander of the agency's law enforcement division. You'll meet the retired APD leader now serving Fulton. And later in our Children Our Future segment, why so many grandparents are raising grandkids and how juvenile court is helping. I'm Jolene Butts Freeman. Fulton Law and Justice begins now. Welcome to Fulton Law and Justice, your inside look at the work of Fulton's justice partners. Now today we begin with the newest addition to the Fulton County Sheriff's Office and why his presence could greatly impact how the office handles its law enforcement division. We're talking about Lieutenant Colonel Sean Jones. But before we talk to the new commander, let's hear from the sheriff about this new appointment.
It's really flattering that he would be interested in coming in here, being the commander of the law enforcement division, replacing the predecessor, who was Lieutenant Colonel Pete Andreessen. And when he left, I approached Assistant Chief Sean Jones and asked if he would be interested, and he said yeah, because I think our reputation as a professional organization is respected by the Atlanta Police Department, and we have an outstanding working relationship with them. And we'll be able to keep that with Lieutenant Colonel Sean Jones here.
Now here's the man the sheriff is excited about, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Jones. Welcome to Fulton Law and Justice.
Thank you, Jolene. I'm happy to be here with you.
Lieutenant Colonel Jones, your reputation clearly precedes you. Now, we're glad to have you here at Fulton County. Can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities and how they were different from the Atlanta Police Department to here?
Okay, well, in terms of responsibilities, quite naturally, you have the jails and the courts over here on this side of the house. On the police side, they primarily responded to 911 calls. So the intensity as a result of responding to those 911 calls, it may be a little less on this side, but it's give us an opportunity to spend more time with the members of the public.
Tell us, what did you think when Sheriff Jackson asked you to come over to be the commander of the law enforcement division here?
We had gone into retirement mode, and I had to think about it for a moment. But, I've known Sheriff Jackson for about 6 or 7 years, and he's well respected in the law enforcement community. I respect him. He and I, we've had the opportunities to sit on panels and panel discussions before, so I really got an opportunity to know him. So when he asked me to become a part of his team, I was really honored.
How do you plan to approach your new role here at the Sheriff's Department?
Well, I'm doing a lot of assessments. I think I have to assess, I have 9 functional areas that's under my purview. I want to make sure I assess all of those areas and fully understand what their strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats are in each of those areas. Then I want to make sure I assess my personnel to fully understand what their knowledge, skills, and abilities are to be able to perform the task. Because once we really get rolling, then the expectation would be that they would be able to meet my expectations of getting those tasks performed and completed.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about some of the challenges you think you might experience in this new role, and what do you think you'll do to manage those challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is really dealing with millennials. I've had opportunity to have those conversations with the millennials in my area of responsibility in the law enforcement division, and they have a lot of energy. And I think I have to see how my energy matches up with their energy. And if I can just make sure I harness that and move it towards the direction and the mission of the organization, I think we'll be successful. I know we're going to be successful, but just really controlling that energy that they have. That's going to be the biggest challenge, I think.
Okay, so you're talking to us about millennials, right, and that energy. What are some of the goals you think, just right off the top of your head, that you think you will start pushing the division toward when you're dealing with the millennials and the younger people?
Well, the most important thing is we're going to always focus on productivity and performance. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure we continue to each year increase what we do in terms of our production in all of our functional areas. Like, again, there are 9 functional areas. Our community engagement, I think that's very important, because when we want to make sure that when we engage the community, we're bringing them kind of to the table with us to help determine how we would work with them. And we even dealing with millennials in the community. We have groups like Black Lives Matters and those other groups. We're dealing with millennials there too. So we need to hear their voice, and that's what the millennials want. You to hear them and kind of respond to, what they're requesting.
Okay, so do you think overall that will be your primary focus this year, or do you have one that?
Yeah, so my primary focus this year would be really working with all of my employees. Okay. Making sure that they have all the training that they need and just understanding what their needs are to be able to be successful. Mm-hmm. Managing I'm going to look at the processes. Everything that we do in each of the functional units, I want to look at how those processes are carried out. What can we do and improve those processes? We'll look at the technology that we use, whether or not the technology that we're using now is still the technology that we need to be using, or should we go in a different direction? And then I focus on supervision. I think in terms of being able to manage your supervisors, especially your frontline supervisors, which would be your sergeants in my division, if they're the most important role, and if they're not getting it, then we can't become and be what we want, achieve those objectives that we're trying to achieve. So I want to make sure not just the sergeants though, but everybody up through the major, rank of major, and even me, I could continue in education. We continue to get what we need to be successful, and so that we can meet our goals and objectives.
Okay. Would you say there are a lot of differences in working for the Atlanta Police Department versus working for Fulton County?
No. The major difference, the only thing I see is, again, is you have the courts and the jails on this side. You have 911 response, on the other side, and we're not. This side is not really the sheriff's department is not driven by 911 response. I think in terms of what I do and what I bring to the table is leadership, and I think leadership, regardless of what agency you're in, it crosses over into both law enforcement jurisdictions or areas.
Okay. Now, obviously, we all know that there have been a lot of challenges with law enforcement today, in today's time. What are you talking to your deputies about in dealing with those challenges? What are you advising them to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The main thing is that when we're out in the public, I think optics are very important. What we do, what we say, how we treat people, all that's important. In our role, we must build public trust. The community must trust us, and they trust us by us building respect. We have to respect the individuals that we're interacting with. It's explaining to them why we're doing the things that we're doing, And just keep in mind, everyone has a cell phone, and everyone is recording. And what you don't want to happen is them to catch you doing something that you may be doing it right, but the appearance is that you're doing it wrong. And so we have to guard against that. We will be training the whole sheriff's department moving forward. On that, coming straight out of really 21st century policing, out of that concept of just being able to have a good law enforcement community relations. So that's very important for us, and that's why I talked about community engagement. We're going to focus on that community engagement.
Okay. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Jones, I can see, the audience can see that you're still relatively very young.
Okay.
Now, after 30 years of law enforcement experience, tell us, why not just retire?
Yeah. Well, I thought I was going to retire, and I was in retirement mode. And, I sat around for a period of time, I guess a couple of months, and then the opportunity became available, and I realized that I just couldn't continue to sit around. I think I still have a lot to offer. I'm a resident of Fulton County. I think I can help my county to continue to be better.
So what are your final thoughts?
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I want to make a great impact on Fulton County. I've been a part of Fulton County for about 33 years, so I'm happy to be here and happy to make a difference.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Jones, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to Fulton County.
All right, thank you.
Yes. When we come back, giving grandparents the help they need to raise their grandkids. Juvenile Court's Our Children, Our Future segment is next. Welcome back. While the number of single parents raising kids has significantly increased over the past several decades, so too has the number of grandparents raising grandkids. That job is not an easy one, and it's why Juvenile Court is trying to come to rescue with support. Here's Juvenile Court's Our Children, Our Future segment with Thomas O'Connor.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Our Children, Our Future, a program where we take a look at juvenile court and our programs for youth and families. At juvenile court, our main focus is on holding youth accountable for their actions and getting them back on track. Oftentimes, this means reaching out and working with families to ensure they have the resources and support they need to succeed. For example, statistics tell us that about 2.7 million grandparents in the United States are responsible for raising their grandchildren. Over 100,000 of these grandparents are in Georgia. Many live on fixed incomes below the poverty line, while others are still working and others may be living on disability. Statistics indicate that about 35% are aged 60 or older. At Fulton County's juvenile court, we saw these families firsthand and decided that there was something we could do to help. One intrepid court staff member worked with probation, administration, and partners throughout the county to launch the Grandparents Raising Grandchildren Support Group. It's a place where grandparents can learn about available resources, get assistance, and come together to share their experiences, forge new friendships, and offer their mutual fellowship and support. Since it launched in 2015, the program has been a great success and has grown to encompass new groups throughout the county and a regular resource fair. Joining us today to talk about the support group and resources for grandparents is Ms. Dolores Baskin, who first started the group at the court. Ms. Baskin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So to get started, what was your inspiration for launching this support group?
Wherein I would love to take the credit for all of this. It was not just me. Judge Turner saw a need when she saw so many grandparents coming through her court, and a lot of them were not able to really understand the process. So she wanted to put together something where the grandparents had the services that they needed. So she thought about a support group. I met with a number of persons through the court. We sat down, we sort of talked about how we wanted to lay it out, and then we launched the first meeting of the Grandparents Raising Grandchildren Support Group.
That's wonderful. And speaking of needs, what are some of the unique needs that grandparents have that other folks we see in the court may not?
The needs run a long list. Some of them have retired. Some of them have raised their own children and decided, okay, now is my time. And then all of a sudden they look up and they're having to raise 3 up to sometimes 9 or 10 grandchildren because of various things that have happened in the family. Some children have lost both parents to death, or both parents are on drugs, or both parents are incarcerated. So they needed to come together and provide a holistic, loving factor for these children. So they took on the children, but they also recognized, I'm not quite ready. So financially, they may not have been ready, or physically, they may not have been ready. And some of them are experiencing mental challenges themselves. So the list goes really long.
And so many of these grandparents raising grandkids, it kind of knits together our social fabric. And so it's wonderful that we have all these programs out there to support them.
Absolutely.
Could you take us through a regular meeting?
Our meetings are loving meetings. So many of our grandparents are members of churches. So when they came together, the first thing that they always wanted to do was start their meetings with prayer. So once they're dropped off, because a lot of them don't have transportation, but the court has been allowed the opportunity to provide transportation for them. So once they arrive and they sign in, they start with prayer. And then we try to have a little breakfast for them, just something sustainable, where they can sit around and just share their own challenges. Sometimes they have joys that they want to share from one meeting to the next. So they want to talk about those things. And a lot of times we always have a speaker that will come in, whether it's DFACS, whether it's legal aid, whether it's a community food bank, whether it's just a navigator from DFACS to come in and sort of help the grandparents. Or we may have a social worker come in from one of the schools, because that has been another challenge for a lot of our grandparents, just trying to navigate that whole school system. So the meetings, they are very interactive. And then at the end of the meeting, because we have partnered with the Mechanicsville Library, some of the grandparents will go upstairs and there's a training that they can take part of just to help them become a little bit more computer literate.
That's wonderful. And it's so good to see a partnership with the library too, as those are one of our great resources in the county. Well, I'd say that we're really fortunate to have the Mechanicsville Branch Library right in the same facility as juvenile court, so we can just walk over. But in terms of the meetings, what's the response been from grandparents?
The response has been phenomenal. When we first started our support group, we probably started with about 7 or 8. Now we're up to almost 20.
Wow.
That we meet the third Thursday of every month, and we have gotten about 20 persons now that are attending. And the last meeting were 4 brand new grandparents.
Oh, that's great.
So the word is getting out, and so we're thankful for that.
And I understand that the group holds a regular resource fair where you bring together all the providers kind of in one space.
Yes.
Services, information, all sorts of great groups. Could you tell us a little about that?
Our resource fair is normally centered around National Grandparents' Day. National Grandparents' Day is normally held in September. So we wanted to provide a resource fair that was just for the grandparents. So we bring in providers that can sit and talk with them one-on-one. So we have a nice program, and then we have a nice meal, and they can go around to the various stations. So we may have MARTA to come in. We may have the community food bank to come in. We may have the police department, the fire department, legal aid. We have a number of agencies that have partnered with us and said, I want to be a part of this because I recognize just how vital it is.
And it's my understanding that the support groups have become so popular that there are actually other branches that have kind of started throughout the county.
We have been in communication, and the whole premise behind this is we wanted to have a support group at every library. There are 18 regional libraries. We wanted to have a support group at every library because we recognize everybody can't come downtown. Because they have the grandchildren that they need to make sure that they're there when school is out, we could provide it in their neighborhood. The conversation is still going on. We have not set a date yet for the next one, but that is something we're very close to starting.
That's good news, though. And the library, like you said, is such a great resource. That
Absolutely.
It's wonderful that they're such an intrepid partner in this enterprise. As you know, as we're wrapping things up, is there anything we didn't get a chance to cover or that you'd like to share about the grandparents group?
The grandparents are in a special place. We all were raised probably by a grandparent at some point in time, but I think the dynamics have changed over the course of the years. And the fact that these grandparents have been so loving to step up, and as one grandparent said, they are my grandchildren, I'm going to love them, and provide the resources they can, and then to reach out. We've had parent support groups to come in, so they've been a part of that. We've had trainings to come in, they've been a part of that. They want to be a part of everything that we're doing to make sure that their grandchildren have every opportunity possible. So it has really been wonderful. So we just welcome anyone to just come and be a part of our meetings.
Oh, that's truly wonderful. And Ms. Baskin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Our Children, Our Future. Looking for more information on the Grandparents Raising Grandchildren Support Group? Here it is.
Thanks, Tom. We'll be right back to wrap up this edition of Fulton Law and Justice. Stay with us. Fulton County has committed itself to serving its residents in 6 priority areas. The strategic goal for Fulton's Justice Partners is making sure that all people are safe. Now on Fulton Law and Justice, we show you how Fulton's law enforcement and justice partners are doing that every day and how they serve and in the programs they provide to enhance the lives of people young and old. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Fulton Law and Justice. I'm Jolene Butts Freeman. We'll see you next time.